Welcome, everyone. Good morning to those who are gathered here today in our sanctuary and to all those who are joining online today. We begin our service with a musical prelude by John Mayhood. Thank you, John. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Charlottesville. My name is Angela Orbaugh, and my pronouns are she and her. And I am pleased to be weaving worship this morning with Reverend Tim Timerson, Reverend Susan Carlson, the amazing Tammy Wilt, music director Scott DeVoe, accompanist John Mayhood, and the UUCville Choir. This sanctuary was built over 70 years ago on the homeland of the Monacan people and was once cared for by enslaved people from Africa and their descendants. We honor all who have dwelt here and all in our congregation whose lives led us to this moment of our gathering. I invite us to take a moment to greet others. Those online may unmute and say hello. Those here in the sanctuary or the social hall are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you do not know, and there are many here today.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Hi.
Happy Easter. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
The church looks packed.
Yeah, looks like a full house. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. My cat's saying good morning too.
It's good to see all the faces. I'm exhausted. My grandson was here. Fun.
Hey, you can come say hello to me? Aw.
I love the energy in here today. Thank you. We offer a special welcome to newcomers and invite you to join us for fellowship after the service in the social hall. Please feel free to use one of the red coffee mugs, which are for newcomers. And UUCville members and friends, you're reminded to offer a warm welcome to anyone with a red mug. We also invite newcomers to stop by the connections table that is near the monitor in the social hall to learn more about us. Seating is also available in the social hall today, where there is a live stream of the service. Everyone is welcome here in the sanctuary, but if you feel like you need a roomier space, the social hall can be a good option. And many thanks to all who are helping us share worship both here and online today. Our greeters and our ushers, our hospitality and logistics team. Special thanks to our AV tech guru, Rachel Buckland, supporting the dual platform worship both online and here on Rugby Road. And now we have greetings from board member Bev Ryan.
I've been told to, can you hear me? I've been told to watch these hats, so I don't trip on them. Good morning. My name is Bev Ryan. I'm vice president of your board. My pronouns are she and her. And I was trying to think of what I wanted to say to everybody today. And the only thing that could come up with was joy. Joy. And I'm a person that makes lists and bullets things. So no bullets, but there is a list. And it's not too long. Spring blossoms and warm weather. This congregation. Our mission statement, love in action. Members and friends, connections through worship, through sermons, and covenant groups. Connections through social activities, potlucks, auction dinners, and picnics. Connections through service, serving on the board, many committees, yard sale, auction, and there's probably a few others that I failed to mention. And most of all today, I want to say, joy to be able to donate through my pledge. Really, it's true. I am part of this congregation and I'm responsible for making sure it thrives. That requires money and service. Today is the last day of the pledge drive. If you haven't pledged yet, please stop by the pledge table while you enjoy the activities and food. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bev. Here are announcements today for our 24-25 pledge drive. It ends today. Many thanks to everyone who has made a pledge. I am happy to report we have received 484,000 in pledges. However, we are still below our goal. So if you have not yet made your pledge, today is the day. You can complete your pledge after the service in the social hall near all the beautiful balloons, or later today on the church website at www.uucharlottesville.org. If you're making your very first pledge or did not make a pledge last year, drop by the table after the service or visit the church website. We need your financial support and commitment so that we can live our mission and continue to put our love into action. So today is the day. Please make your pledge. At the conclusion of service, those in the sanctuary are invited to help us hide eggs for our egg hunt. Once the eggs are hidden, parents can then pick up their children from the parlor and meet Caroline Hines in the foyer at 12:30. Now, please join us for a finger food potluck in the social hall. After the egg hunt wraps up, there will be a fun fair. The fun fair will now be held in Lower Hall 2 with games, crafts, and activities. Everyone is welcome to the potluck and the fun fair, and especially volunteers. We need some volunteer helpers needed to facilitate games and activities. Volunteers are also needed to clean up after both the potluck and the fun fair. Many thanks to our Buildings and Grounds team for completing two very important projects, the Summit House porch and the removal of the slate outside of the entrance to the social hall. Take a look if you have not seen the progress of what we've made. Copies of Freeman Allen's book, A History of Racism in Charlottesville, is available in the social hall at the RE table after the service for $10, cash or check. And proceeds go to the African American Teaching Fellows Program. Please join us in the social hall after the service for coffee and conversation.
Thank you, Angela. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Happy Easter. So good to see so many of you here. Welcome to our first time newcomers and guests. We're so glad you joined us today. We're going to begin this morning with our call to worship, and this comes from my colleague and friend, Reverend Evan Carville Zemer. If we lived in another climate, our souls might speak other languages. We might speak oasis or permafrost, dry season or monsoon.
But our souls speak spring. Our souls speak green shoots pushing through last year's leaves. Our souls speak flower buds stretching to the sun. Our souls speak mud puddle and nest building, damp earth and worm castings, tiny green leaves and frog choruses.
We speak spring because spring sings in us. We gather to nurture our faith.
In our own growing, in our own courage to push through, in our own blossoming in beauty, in our own small part in the spring of this world.
Come,
Come,
let
let
us
us worship together. As Tammy Wilt lights the flame of our chalice this morning, please join me in saying our unison chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. And then also join me in our hand motions. Our hand is a matchbook. Our finger is the match. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open minds. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving hearts. Now please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 61, Lo, the Earth Awakes Again.
Well, I would like to, we have a wonderful story. I hope I'm turned on there. Am I? I am. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, my microphone came unplugged. Hold on a second. There we go. Rachel's like, come on, Reverend Tim, clip your mic back on. There we go. By the way, while I'm wasting time here, I'll let you all know that before the service this morning, my glasses broke, which is not a problem for preaching a sermon because I'm very nearsighted. But that means that if I'm standing here and I go like this, it doesn't mean that I don't think you belong here. It's like I'm trying to figure out who you are. So, all right. Now, I would now like to invite our children, the young at heart, to come on down and join Angela and myself and somebody else in a couple of minutes. Come on down, have a seat. What's up?
My mom said it was for something.
Maybe it's, do you guys take an offering in the children's worship? Why don't you hold on to it and see, because you're going to be going to another little worship in a minute. Come on down, come on down. Young at heart, not so young, everybody's welcome. So our story, come on down, have a seat. Our story this morning is called Butterflies Under Our Hats. Once there was a town called Chelm where there was no luck. If something could go wrong, it did. The roofs of the houses always leaked. The sidewalks were cracked. The gardens grew only weeds. Nothing was ever right. Some people said,
Luck comes and goes.
but in Chelm's case, it never came. It only went. Others said,
There is no such thing as luck.
the people of Chelm were certain that luck was real and somewhere they had lost it. They sighed,
We never have any luck.
and so they gave up. They stopped building houses. They delayed repairing sidewalks. That sounds a little familiar around here. And they quit planting gardens. Then one day, a strange woman came to town. You might want to also look behind you. Look behind you, everyone. No one had ever seen her before. She wore a large black felt hat over her red hair. And she had a long purple dress with a white butterfly stole. She told the people,
Whoa, she's gonna fall. There's something better than luck.
Better than luck.
they weren't sure, but they listened anyway. What did the people have to lose?
Tomorrow at daybreak, butterflies of hope are going to fly into your town square. And if you can manage to put a cap or a hat over top of them, you'll have hope. And hope is better than luck.
Just as the red-haired woman had said, clouds of colorful butterflies appeared. They landed on the ground. For a few moments, they just sat there. Their wings fluttered softly. The people were very quiet. Then they gently placed their hats over the butterflies. There were all kinds of hats and caps, sunbonnets, silly straw hats, fancy hats with feathers, and they all covered the town square.
We have it. Now we have hope.
But just as they said those words, it began to rain. We need everyone's help to tell the story now. So I hope everybody's listening. As we talk about the rain coming down, we need you to start off by patting your knees. Let's make some soft rain sounds. All of you at home, please join in too, even if we can't hear you here in the sanctuary. So let's start off slow. It started off as a drizzle, but then it became a downpour. And suddenly the people needed their hats. One by one, they took their hats and caps off. And one by one, the butterflies disappeared. Oh, your hat fell off. The people sighed.
Now, not only don't we have any luck, we have lost hope as well.
At that moment, the red-haired woman with the black hat appeared. Her large black felt hat collected the raindrops. There it is.
There you go.
How'd that happen?
It happens.
So, look under your hats.
The people were puzzled, for they had seen the butterflies disappear. The butterflies were gone, and with them their last ray of hope. But then they looked inside their hats. There were no butterflies.
Nothing. There is nothing under our hats.
Look again inside your hats.
The people looked again, and they could hardly believe it. The butterflies were gone, but they had left a trace of something, a fine, faint yellow powder like pollen that had been stuck to the butterflies. And they saw it, the trace of the butterflies. And that was all they needed, hope.
The people of Chelm started building their houses, repairing their sidewalks, and planting gardens. Sometimes their roofs leaked or their sidewalks cracked, but not all the time. Their gardens grew weeds, but they also grew beautiful flowers.
The people of Chelm no longer looked for luck. They found something much, much better. And it was there all along, right under their hats. It was there all along, right under their hats. Well, thank you all very much for coming up and listening to our story. Can we now join in singing our children as they go forward? And all children up through grade 7 should go to the parlor. Everyone to the parlor.
The piece that we're going to be performed, I don't know, it may not seem appropriate for Easter, but I do remind you that Easter also involves Good Friday. And we have to be, even if you believe in the resurrection of Jesus, we do also have to believe in the fact that he died. And this particular tune, Good Night, Dear Heart, is intended, it was originally, the composer of the tune had a brother who was about to adopt a child from Ethiopia, a 4-month-old child. And they found out that the child died before they could receive her. So he wanted to write something appropriate and found a poem that Mark Twain had chosen for his daughter Susie, who died at 24. And he put it on the tombstone, and I'll just read it to you. Warm summer sun, shine kindly here. Warm southern wind blows softly here. Green sod above, lie light, lie light. Good night, dear heart, good night, good night. And that's what we'll perform.
Thank you, choir. That was absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. A Tomb is No Place to Stay by Richard Gilbert. A tomb is no place to stay, be it a cave in the Judean hills or the dark cavern of the spirit. A tomb is no place to stay. When fresh grass rolls away the stone of winter cold, and valiant flowers burst their way to warmth and light. A tomb is no place to stay. When each morning announces our reprieve, and we know we are granted yet another day of living. A tomb is no place to stay. When life laughs a welcome to hearts that have been away too long. We are an interconnected community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by making time each week to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. As is our practice, you are invited to come forward now and place a glass stone in a communal bowl of water as a symbolic act of each being held by the larger love that holds us all. Those online may type your joys and sorrows into the chat. Rosalie Samari, our pastoral care team member, will also come forward to help hold the space. Rosalie will be available for a few minutes after the service in the back corner of the sanctuary if you are in need of pastoral support or just need someone to listen. Those worshiping online, you can contact the pastoral care team by email at pastoral@uucharlottesville.org. Let us begin our ritual of joys and sorrows. This community offers its love and support to what is closest to our hearts. Another way we show our care for one another is in sharing our financial gifts with our community and our congregation. Our social action collection for the month of March is Cultivate Charlottesville, whose mission is to engage youth and community in building equitable, sustainable food systems through garden-based experiential learning, growing and sharing healthy food, and amplifying community leaders while advocating for food justice. Their approach centers racial equity as we grow with students, neighbors, and others working to take Charlottesville from a foodie place to a food equity city where all residents can thrive. Rachel, will you show us that slide for social action, for giving, for those who would like to make a donation right now? In addition to giving online, if you would like to give today with cash or check, please use the social action collection envelopes here in the sanctuary and place your offering in the collection plate. But remember, do not seal those envelopes because we do reuse those. Now, along with our social action collection, each week we invite everyone into the spiritual practice of generosity by giving to the ministry of our congregation. Through your pledges, and with the weekly Sunday morning offering together, our financial gifts and support sustain our congregation. This is our shared ministry. During the music that follows, you may choose to make your Sunday morning offering by using the text address or going to our website. Here in the sanctuary, you may place cash or check in the collection plates as they are passed. Let us now dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, "We accept your gifts with gratitude. May we use them wisely for the highest good."
Today's reading is I Will Not Give Up by Howard Thurman. It was above the timberline. The steady march of the forest had stopped, as if some invisible barrier had been erected beyond which no trees dared even move in a single file. Beyond was bareness, sheer rocks, snow patches, and strong, untrammeled winds. Here and there were tufts of evergreen bushes that had somehow managed to survive despite the severe pressures under which they had to live. They were not lush. They lacked the kind of grace of the vegetation below the timber line, but they were alive and hardy. Upon close investigation, however, it was found that these were not ordinary shrubs. The formation of the needles, etc., was identical with the trees further down. As a matter of fact, they looked like the branches of the other trees. When one actually examined them, the astounding revelation was they were branches. For hugging the ground, following the shape of the terrain, were trees that could not grow upright, following the pattern of their kind. Instead, they were growing as vines grow along the ground, and what seemed to be patches of stunted shrubs were rows of branches growing, developing trees. What must have been the torturous frustration and the stubborn battle that had finally resulted in this strange phenomenon? It is as if the tree had said, I am destined to reach for the skies and embrace in my arms the wind, the rain, the snow, and the sun, singing my song of joy to all heavens. But this I cannot do. I have taken root beyond the timberline, and yet I do not want to die. I must not die. I shall make a careful survey of my situation and work out a method, a way of life, which I must eke out my days. In the end, I may not look like other trees. I may not be all that was in me cries out to be, but I will not give up. I will use every resource in me and about me to answer life with life. In doing so, I shall affirm that this is the kind of universe that sustains upon demand the life it is in. I wonder if I dare to even act as a tree acts. Wonder. I wonder. Do you?
Well, good morning again. Happy Easter. Thank you all so much for being here today. We have a pretty full house, and it's so nice to see so many new faces and just to welcome you into this congregation of love and justice and peace. I want to thank the choir for that beautiful anthem, and Angela and Tammy for helping with this morning's service. I'm especially glad that Tammy was able to share the reading you just heard from Howard Thurman. Last spring, I taught a class about Thurman, and one of the books the class read was a collection of his beautiful meditations. During our class sessions, I would invite members to share a meditation that they had read that especially spoke to them. Tammy shared, I Will Not Give Up. And after she finished reading it, I told her that if it was also one of my favorites, and the next time I used it in a service, I was going to invite her to read it. Well done, Tammy. Great. I also want to just mention as well that, and thanks to Christine Gresser for reminding me about this, that today, in addition to being Easter Sunday, that today is Trans Day of Visibility. And that is such a wonderful, wonderful affirmation and reminder that everyone, all people are lovely and beautiful and precious, no matter who they are, where they've come from, and that this congregation's doors are always wide open. Okay, now on to Easter. Now, I don't think that I'm going out on a limb in saying that Easter can be both joyful and a challenging holiday for many Unitarian Universalists. In fact, over the course of the last week, a few of you told me that I might not see you today because you find Easter to be kind of problematic and it's not really your cup of tea. Now, for those of you who are new to Unitarian Universalism, let me explain. You see, we can be a pretty rational, reason-oriented, and sometimes even skeptical bunch. And we have tended throughout much of our history to read sacred texts more, how shall I say this, metaphorically rather than literally. Not surprisingly, a story in which a large stone is rolled away and in which a person who has died a terrible death somehow comes back to life, that story challenges some of our most basic assumptions about how life and the universe work. But I will say that for all of our skepticism and questions, we most assuredly value and affirm the spiritual power and richness of stories. Stories that may or may not be literally true, but which contain great and lasting truths. Truths which speak to our own lives and journeys and that remind us of our own challenges and struggles. But let me make something else clear. However you choose to understand Easter or any sacred story or text, please know that your perspective is welcome in Unitarian Universalism and in this congregation. You see, we don't have a single creed or belief or a required understanding that you must accept in order to be welcomed and loved in this congregation or in any UU congregation. In Unitarian Universalism, we are believers and skeptics, spiritual and secular, storytellers and myth makers, as well as seekers of facts and evidence. And yes, we do manage to hold all that together. So with all that in mind, let's take a look for a moment at the Easter story. The Christian New Testament tells us that Jesus and his disciples entered Jerusalem to cheering crowds on what came to be known as Palm Sunday. That, of course, was last Sunday. Jesus then appears to have caused some kind of a disturbance at the temple, a disturbance that gets the attention of local authorities. He is soon arrested, put on trial, and sentenced to death. Jesus is then crucified by the Roman authorities on what has come to be known as, Scott said earlier, Good Friday. His body is then placed in a tomb, and a large stone is rolled in front of that tomb. 3 days later, on Easter Sunday, some of his disciples and followers visit the tomb, discover that the stone has been rolled away, and that Jesus is no longer there. Soon thereafter, the Gospels tell us that some of the disciples begin to have visions and even conversations with the risen Christ, and not surprisingly, begin to proclaim that he has been resurrected. Now, as I reflect on all that Jesus said and did in his life, and how much he must have meant to his disciples and followers, I can't begin to imagine what those 3 days, or however many days it was, between his death on Good Friday and his resurrection, can't imagine what that time period must have been like for his disciples and followers. Think about it. Their leader, their Messiah, their Savior, who they believed would usher in a new era called the Kingdom of God. That Savior had died a violent and terrible death. When he had entered Jerusalem just the week before to cheers and adulation, their hopes must have been soaring. But in just a few days, those hopes gave way to fear and grief and what must have been deep despair. But then, while in the depth of their shock and their grief, the disciples somehow found a path to hope. In some ways, I think their journey must have resembled that of those extraordinary trees above the timberline that Howard Thurman talked about. Think about it. Their hearts and their spirits, they must have been battered, blown over by winds of loss and despair. And yet, as hopeless as they must have felt, something amazing happened. They could not and would not give up on life, on faith, and on Jesus. They simply could not let the love, the hope, and the joy he not only brought to their lives, but to the world, they couldn't let those things die or be forgotten. While we can never know for certain what actually happened on Easter morning, there can be little doubt that the hopes and dreams of the disciples, they most certainly journeyed out of a cave of deep despair and into the light of love and joy. So how does it happen? How can people facing the most painful and difficult circumstances, including even death, how can people find hope? In thinking about hope, I don't think there's any better guide than Howard Thurman. He has another wonderful meditation, which I often use on Easter Sundays, called The Glad Surprise. And in that meditation, Thurman finds the meaning of hope in the return of spring. As he says, when swelling buds and delicate blossoms proclaim an entire world of newness everywhere. According to Thurman, the rising sun and the return of songs and blossoms point to something basic about the nature and meaning of life. You see, in the midst of darkness and despair, and yes, even death, life persists and remains a gift and a blessing filled with possibility, hope, and yes, new beginnings, a blessing that brings comfort to those who mourn, liberation to those who are oppressed, and joy to those who are sorrowful. And according to Thurman, it is this recognition of life's essential blessedness and the ultimate promise of light and hope. He says that is the ultimate meaning of Easter. Now, in thinking about hope, I want to take a moment to make sure that we don't confuse hope with its very distant cousin, optimism. Optimism is a conviction that something very specific is going to turn out a certain way, usually for the best. You know, I will get that new job. I will get an A on tomorrow's test. I will preach a good sermon on Sunday morning. That's optimism. Hope is something different, something deeper, something that gets, as Thurman says, to the very essence of life. As great spiritual teachers throughout the ages have taught us, hope has little to do with certainty about how things are going to turn out. Rather, hope is a quiet confidence in the ultimate beauty and possibilities of life. Hope isn't a guarantee. Hope is an unshakable faith that, as prevalent as darkness and suffering are, they do not have the final say, and life is ultimately grounded in love, beauty, and the glad surprise. As Thurman points out, hope and the glad surprise are most often experienced, or at least in my situation, in my case, noticed when we are feeling our lowest. But it's in just these moments that the goodness and blessedness of life seems to come out of nowhere, rolling away giant stones of darkness and despair and offering us hope. I can't tell you precisely where those glad surprises come from or why they seem to bless us when we need them most. Perhaps they are the work of a divine spirit that rolls away stones of despair and sorrow. Perhaps they flow from the kindness and generosity of the human heart, reaching out to help someone who is hurting. While the ultimate source of hope is a mystery, the one thing we can know is that hope is real, and that whether it be a cave in the Judean hills or the deepest cavern of the spirit, the reality of hope calls to us and reminds us that a tomb is no place to stay. So before I close, I want to share a story with you, a personal story, a story of a profound experience of hope that blessed my life during a time when I felt as if a giant stone had been rolled in front of my hopes, my dreams, and my future. The story took place about 10 years ago and involves my encounter with a man who was a patient in the same hospital where I was being treated. Now, I imagine that I've been at this congregation for a little over a year and a half, and I'm guessing the details of what I'm about to share may not be known widely, although I've alluded to having medical challenges in previous sermons. The simple truth is that I am a cancer survivor. And a little over 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very treatable form of lymphoma. Now, I also want you to know that my treatment worked fabulously, and this coming summer will mark 10 years that I've been cancer-free. Thank you. And in case you can't tell, I feel pretty good. Now, when I met this man in the hospital, I had just undergone the very first round of my 6-month treatment of chemo. And let me just describe how I responded to it. And I don't want to get too technical here, but the chemo, that first treatment really kicked my butt. I experienced some pretty significant side effects, and those side effects put me in the hospital for the better part of 2 weeks. Now, not surprisingly, I guess, the longer I found myself hospitalized, the lower my hopes and spirits sank. I spent hours and hours worrying about the future and what might happen if I couldn't tolerate the treatment that I needed. I wondered if I was going to be blessed to grow old with my beautiful wife, if I'd be able to see my children graduate and eventually marry, if I would live long enough to become a grandpa, which I have, by the way. I also wondered if I'd be able to continue being a UU minister. I was serving a congregation in Northeast Ohio. I'd originally thought that the 6 months of chemo would be tough, but not so bad that I couldn't continue serving that congregation. But as I sat in that hospital bed, I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to do the work that I love so much and feel called to do. But then, as my hope kept dwindling and my spirits were at their lowest, an extraordinary human being came into my life. Or perhaps I should say he danced into my life. I met him just very briefly. We only spoke for a couple of minutes, but in that briefest of moments, this man gave me hope and restored my faith in the possibilities of life. Now, I encountered him as Carol and I were walking up and down the hallways of the hospital floor that my room was located on. Not only did the doctors and nurses want me to get up and move around, but walking always has provided me with a place and a space to try and make some sense of all that was going on and try to ease the fear and uncertainty that I was feeling. Now, as Carol and I walked those hallways, I noticed another patient who, like me, was walking and pushing a pole. Those of you who've been in the hospital before, right, with an IV hanging from it. I was as well. Hey, Angela, would you bring that microphone stand over here? I have to demonstrate something for you in a minute. Now, this man was bald, very, very thin, and he seemed to be a good bit older than I was. But there was something very strange about the way he moved. Every so often, usually as he was about to change direction, like get the end of one hallway and turn the corner, he would inexplicably begin to turn and spin in an odd circular motion. All right, let's see if I can do it. So he would sort of like be walking along. Maybe I should go down here so I don't fall down the stairs. Okay, so he'd be kind of rolling along, and then he'd get to a corner and he'd start to do this. And then he would keep going. All right, now, the first couple of times I saw this man make these moves, I have to confess, I thought he must be stepping aside to avoid a mess on the floor. But as I got closer and saw him make these motions again and again, I realized that he wasn't stepping around something, but he was dancing. Now, at first, I confessed that I wondered if there was maybe something else wrong with this man besides having a physical illness. But as I watched him dance and spin, I realized that he was dancing with a kind of joy and exuberance that I had rarely seen before, and that I certainly never expected to encounter on a hospital floor that was filled with cancer patients. Now, eventually, Carol and I crossed paths with this man, who I am going to call the dancing man. And of course, we stopped to say hello. He asked about my condition and shared that he was dealing with a very serious form of leukemia and had undergone a stem cell transplant that had kept him in the hospital for months. He told me that his treatment was starting to come to an end and that he was hoping to go home in the near future. When I finally got around to asking him about his dance moves, he smiled and confirmed that he was indeed dancing and that he just had to dance because for all that he had gone through, he felt joy. He felt blessed. He felt gratitude. He was so filled with hope. The dancing man and I wished each other well, and he continued dancing on his way, and dancing to what I hope was a full recovery. Folks, I got to tell you that my encounter with the dancing man, it saved me. It changed my life. I was feeling more fear and anxiety than I had ever experienced, and I couldn't think about anything except all the bad things that might happen to me. But here was a man who had been much sicker than I, and had endured so much pain and hardship, and so much more pain and hardship than I ever had. And how did he respond? He danced. He felt blessed. And he lived his life from a place of hope rather than despair. And from that moment, 10 years ago, until this very day, the dancing man has been my teacher, my example, my ambassador of hope. He has taught me that while life is scary and can be filled with despair, we must find a way, even if it's just for a moment, we must find a way to see every day and every moment as an invitation to be hopeful and grateful and to dance. And that, friends, is the message that I want to leave you with this Easter morning. We find ourselves living through scary, scary times. Many in our world and some in this congregation are experiencing despair and sorrow, grief and great, great loss. But as the Easter story, as Howard Thurman, and as the dancing man teach us, despair and darkness don't have to swallow us up, and they don't have the final say in life. We can find a bridge over troubled water, and we can find a way to roll away those stones of darkness and despair. Like the trees above the timberline, we may have to adjust and adapt, and perhaps we won't always be able to do or experience all that we wished for or dreamed about. But we can follow the lead of the dancing man and answer life with life, despair with hope. That, folks, is the promise of Easter morning and of every morning. On this blessed day, and in the days ahead, may you find your way to love, to joy, to hope, and to peace. And wherever your journey takes you, keep dancing. Keep dancing. Amen, and blessed be. So friends, let's now rise and body our spirit. Let's join in singing our closing hymn. It's not really danceable, but it's really, really beautiful. Hymn number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere. Angela, would you extinguish the chalice, please? Now, before I deliver the closing words, a reminder, if you didn't hear it in the announcements, we need some of you to stick around for a few minutes and help hide Easter eggs here in the sanctuary. They're plastic, so they're sitting right over here. I'll bring them out. So those of you who would like to help hide some eggs, the children will come in here at 12:30. Oh, by the way, don't give any away like where they are. Keep that a secret. Children will come back in at 12:30 and they will have a good old time. So I'll bring the eggs down as soon as I finish the closing words. If you don't want to hide eggs, please go on into the potluck. Please hang around and stay with us and enjoy conversation. And we're just so blessed that you're here today. My closing words are from a UU ministerial colleague, William Murray, not the movie star. He says, "Let us go forth this day with the faith that life is worth living, that adversity can be transformed into hope, that love is eternal, and that life is stronger than death. And may this faith inspire us to live our lives with dignity, with love, and with courage this day and every day." Friends, be well. Take very good care of yourselves, of each other, and of the world. May your days be blessed with love and kindness and joy. And you have most certainly blessed us with those things on this beautiful Easter Sunday. Blessed be. Go in peace. Hide some eggs. Go have some finger food. Amen.